Well, tonight on Debate Among Friends, NFL questionable questions at the combine. The NFC and AFC are primed for some new faces in different places as free agency takes place. NCAA March Madness and NBA news and more starting now.
Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, welcome to another edition of Debate Amongst Friends live on YouTube and on Twitch. We're very happy you decided to join us on Thursday, March 14th, 2018. Happy Pi Day to everyone. But I am no Pi, and I am just a guy named Professor John Gotti. And always by my side, the major star of this whole show. Always hawking out with no flack. It's the Doc. How you doing tonight, sir?
I was good until you started talking about yourself.
I mean, sometimes people want to be like Doc. Other times, they just don't want to be Gotti. And those other times are all the time.
They must be broke.
Definitely. I mean, the professor might become broken soon.
Highly doubtful, but I'm doing good, sir. I mean, I'm definitely doing good. Hopefully, we have a great show tonight, and looking forward to this debate.
Hey, let's get ourselves started. But with our first subject, talking about controversial questions that can cause people to man up and get stolen, we've recruited the Duke. He's in the studio. He got through security. He said, you know what? I would like to come on last, sometimes the middle, but hey, I'll start right at the beginning. How you doing tonight, sir?
I am good. Here to get that controversial cash.
I mean, there's no other. That's the best kind of cash, in my opinion, at least.
That's the first controversial statement made. I wish there was one in the intro.
Oh my goodness. I mean, we probably need to get a counter started for a controversial statement set. Controversial, not, money into jar levels of controversy.
I mean, as long as we're not putting $5 in the jar, I guess everything is good.
Everything is good. So for this subject, there is no $5 jar penalty. I explained it to Helen earlier today. I said, you know what, this is a very, very controversial subject. It's very personal for a lot of people, very sensitive. So, at least for this segment, we're going to omit the $5 rule. So, gentlemen.
So, the first subject, of course, we spoke about it on our Facebook. If people haven't followed us yet, we do have both a show page as well as a group page.
Yep.
Please follow, like, and share. Subscribe. The works.
And if not, we appreciate the fact that you at least visit us.
Absolutely. Well, Darius, we're just going to call him Juice. I'm sure that's probably Geist. But we're just gonna say
it is
juice.
Geist, but Juice.
Because it really looks
you got
like
the juice now.
Yeah,
you got the real juice.
He probably heard that his whole life. But he was asked this past combine during the interviews about his, shall we say sexuality?
It is sexual. Well, sexual orientation.
Sexual
orientation.
Yeah.
Foul? Technical foul?
Oh, yeah. That's technical
Unsportsmanlike conduct?
Yeah.
Nah.
No?
Nah.
Duke?
Why would you say no?
Hold on. Duke, explain your case. Why is it not a foul? Please, so would someone please give the Duke a mic?
Yeah, take a chance to duke it out.
Okay. here, here's my take on this. What is he gonna do when he gets drafted? And some reporter asks this.
That's a good
I'm just
question.
I'm just saying, like, how many times have
A
we questioned Odell Beckham
reporter.
Jr.'s sexuality?
Well, he does some weird
Well, he
things.
okay.
But but
That's I
Yeah.
no.
but all I'm saying is that once you become a public figure, everyone's in your business, and a lot of people ask some really out of pocket questions.
And
True.
So
they do.
before I,
I agree
you
with
know,
that, but
I'm just
to
saying
are you
before
saying that
I
are you saying that the media will sit there and ask an NFL player whether or not they are homosexual? Is that what you're
why
saying?
not? Why not?
I
It's
mean,
not
if
like
it's
it hasn't happened in the past.
I mean TMZ and I can understand it, but your example is Odell Beckham Jr.
Well, that was just the easiest one to come up with. But no, I mean, really honestly and truthfully, all it takes is the hint of something going on. And now, who knows? CNN, ESPN, any number of news outlets will want to follow up. Like, is it true? Are you actually homosexual? And if so, will you be coming out openly as, another openly gay player? It is very much so a question that can come up in any conversation. So I want to know before I invest the time, money, and energy into you, are you going to clam up, foul up, or do any number of things that could jeopardize either your reputation or the reputation of the club or the league?
It sucks because, of course, we know the first openly gay player, Michael Sam, who was a phenomenal football player at the University of Missouri, didn't have a great pro career shortly after basically coming out as the first openly gay basketball player. It was different in
Football
base.
player.
Oh my goodness, football player. I was just thinking of the basketball player in my mind. Um, 'Cause, see, it was different for him, and that was Collins because he wasn't really good. Um, but Michael Sam was actually a good football player. It just happened that he came out as homosexual. He then fell to the seventh round and went on to basically be ruled out of the NFL. But I think it's a little premature because to ask somebody, hey, are you gay? You gay or not? Like that's kind of crazy in an interview where this guy may not have said anything to even remotely show or even realize why somebody would ask that. Like, we're not saying, hey, do you prefer mayonnaise or mustard on your sandwich? We're talking
Depends on the
about your,
sandwich.
but that's what I'm saying. It depends on the sandwich. Hey, do you like sausage or whatever? You know what I mean? Like, we're talking about your sexual orientation here. That
And I understand that. But again, the point that I'm making is I need to see not only the type of player that you are, but the type of person that you are. Because 9 out of 10 times, it's not an injury that'll end a career. It is some crap you end up doing off the field.
So if this running back could run for 2,000 yards, I mean, the media would question his penis?
It's very much so a possibility. I'm not saying because of that, but I'm saying if I have free will to ask you whatever question I want to ask you,
Of
and
course.
especially in these days and ages of people looking for athletes or entertainers to be their role models to these certain identity groups, why wouldn't I be actively trying to find out or search out? Maybe I don't ask every player, but you're coming into the league. I want to find out more about you. Maybe I ask, hey, do you know anyone, or have you ever participated in a questionable situation? I'm gonna start digging. And again, not that I'm necessarily trying to find anything, but should I get a whiff of something? Yeah, I'm gonna chase it down.
And I mean, now, do you think, and of course, I don't want to stay on this topic for too long, though, but I mean, do you think that it could be just because of the way he looks? I mean, he looks like a well groomed guy. He has his braids. I mean, it could be it could be anything. It could just be the fact that he's light skinned and his goatee is perfectly groomed. Hey, are you gay? I don't know. I want to make sure here. You know what I mean? Like
Well,
that's weird.
and like you said, it could literally be anything.
That's
It
crazy.
could be that you had that friend in college that came out as gay, and now I'm like, well, that's a little close to home, or could it be a possibility that you maybe experimented, or I don't know.
I mean, what if he was just to say no? I love
Well, then it's
women,
dead in the water.
and then
And
he comes out to be gay anyway. you know.
hey, look,
Well,
it'll be a great punchline, I guess.
and for us
But
to not just completely just focus on the sexual orientation question, but he mentioned another type of question as well too, in which he was asked, whether or not his mother was a prostitute, sell her
mhm.
body.
That one sounds like something that somebody they might have gotten word of. Even though I don't know how one was to get away with something like that, because unless that was one of those questions, one of those throw-in questions to see how somebody reacts. That could be a question that somebody just throws out there to see if somebody's going to negatively react. Like,
and that's
hey,
and
if I
that's been
say
the
something to
story too.
you, are you
Yeah,
going to jump up and punch me in the face or something?
but you
and
know
and that's
what?
and
That
that's
right
been the
there
story though.
exactly proves my point.
That makes sense.
This whole line of questioning was just to see the type of person that you are. Are you going to take it on the chin, or are you going to get butthurt about it?
Now, in that regard, I would be like, okay, that makes sense. Ask me if I'm gay. Do I get defensive? Ask me if my mom's a prostitute. Do I get defensive? Huh? He's a pretty even guy. I like him. I'm gonna draft him.
I'm
Maybe.
just saying. If nothing else, I might draft you either way. But at least now I know I can't put you in front of no cameras. You
and
won't
it
be
might
doing
not
press
and
conferences.
it might not be the cameras. It could be just being on the field as an NFL pro.
Or it could
People
just
are
be
going to say
being
all
in the
kinds
locker
of
room too.
stuff, and maybe they just want to make sure that you're the type of guy who's not going to react. Now that's something completely different. I never really
And
thought about that
and
line of
and that's
questions.
true. Like I said, how many times have we seen a player just haul off on somebody, and everybody on the sidelines and in the stands is wondering, well, what just happened?
I mean, this could be the new Ryan Leaf school of interviewing.
Hilarious. But that being said, and I know we're gonna keep going to tangents about things. So while we all agree that there's a little bit of a shock factor towards it, but then we also kind of understand where they're trying to go for it. Do we feel that there could have been a better line of questioning that can still try to gauge these kind of reactions, but isn't as off key as these?
See, I'm not
Well,
sure.
exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
what other line of questioning are you gonna? I'm looking for shock value. I'm looking
yeah.
to throw you off your game to see how you react.
Now that he's mentioned it, and now that I can see the other side of the coin, now it's kind of like, okay, if they weren't really asking about sexual orientation, but just trying to get a rise out of somebody, and who knows, they might have asked the entire group something question like, hey, do you like having sex with animals? You know what I
Again,
mean? Like, whoa, whoa, whoa,
and and just think about it. If you're a 20-something-year-old young man, athlete, top of your
Mhm.
game, you are dripping with all kinds of swag and pride.
True.
And the one thing, or I guess in this case, two things that I could possibly come at you with is about your sexual orientation or the habits of your parents,
Your parents.
particularly your mother, or maybe even your girlfriend.
And when you think about it, and this is just me thinking back to being a young male from Jersey City, that's one of the two things that would technically get somebody in trouble or get into a fight. You talk about somebody's sexuality, or
Hmm.
you talk about somebody's mama.
Yep.
I mean, when you think about it, theoretically, I mean, strategically, it's a perfect storm to get somebody emotionally flustered to punch you in
Yep.
the face.
And once again, if he gets drafted and some reporter just comes out of pocket because, well, I just want a shocking story for this byline, and now you come off as the next angry player, how does that play out?
I don't know. I mean, when we think about it, it's like, and I'm looking at a report here in which Dan Quinn, who was the head coach of the Falcons, did ask Eli Apple, who was later drafted by the Giants, about his sexuality. And of course, he wasn't punished. But I imagine this must be something that's in the NFL culture somewhere where, hey, we want to make sure that these guys are maybe mentally tough or can stand it, even though we say we don't really care if they're gay or not, or homosexual, or whatever the case may be, or see themselves as a woman. There's so many different terminologies out there now that, I don't want to dive into that. But I mean, there's a possibility that, hey, we're saying we're asking these questions to see who they are mentally. The NFL can't really punish for that. And I guess to your question, they could ask questions, but when you think about where college athletes who are going into the draft are prepared by their agents, by their parents. Like if you were to ask somebody, "Hey, tell me about yourself," their elevator pitch would be on point, and they probably ask that
Probably.
question first. But if somebody was to come to me in an interview and say, "Hey, are you gay?" I'd be like, "What?" Like it would, as you say, it would put me on tilt to a point where I would be appalled and taken back by the fact that they would even ask me in an interview. Like it would throw me off. So you say, "Hey, are you gay?" Whoa, whoa, whoa. And then I answer, and then you come back and say, "Now tell me what you would do in this cover three defense."
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, as someone who has interviewed many people, male and female, that is a tactic that I employ. I will ask some questions about the job that they're applying for, and then I'll come out of left field and ask them to describe their perfect vacation spot. Or if they were to gain superpowers tomorrow, what would it be? Just
Now,
anything to throw you off.
I've heard that I've done that same thing. I've done that same thing. I mean, I guess we technically don't have the power to ask about somebody's sexuality, but I guess that's where the issue's coming in because NFL coaches are basically being given that power.
And this is true. And now, here's the thing. As far as, equal opportunities and all that good jazz, the only thing that is really the crux of those laws is that you are asking everyone the same question.
Right.
So if I am literally going down the line and I ask everyone this question, and 9 out of 10 of these guys are like, "Psh, what? Nah, next question." And, it just doesn't even phase them. But that one person is like, "Oh my God, I was so offended." That's when you hear about it. I
Right.
mean, right now we've only heard of 2 cases, but how many other people have been asked this question and just shrugged it off?
True. That's true. I mean, like I said, I would have been like, "Yo, this is so wrong," but now that we're talking about it, kind of makes perfect sense. In a nutshell. I mean, I'm interested to hear what the Professor John Gotti, the King of RNG, the Troll Masters, the Data Analyzing Ninja, the conqueror of his own destiny, has to say about this topic. Because I know, the Duke and I have gone back and forth, and he's made some great, great, great. I mean, his opinion is great. I mean, the argument is it flipped me. I'm flipped.
Okay, that's one.
Well,
Mr. Gotti.
my opinion is this.
Uh,
As you know, the three of us are all from corporate America, so there are certain things that we are obligated to do, both on a professional standpoint and an ethical standpoint.
Mhm.
So where I'm appalled is I'm looking at it as, if it was myself.
mm-hmm.
Um, Personalizing. That's part one. Then
Right.
I'm looking at it as, well, everyone's okay with it because of what it's meant to do. And while I agree, it's great to find out if the person is mentally tough. I disagree because you could be burning bridges before you realize it as well. And here's what I mean by that. So let's say Mr. Juice was asked these questions. Of course, I'm using a wide range of examples here. Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Juice was asked these questions. He answered it flying colors. And let's say that very same coach who asked him those questions drafted him. He has a phenomenal first, 2-3 years on his rookie contract.
Mm-hmm.
Come time to resign, the executives, this guy's doing great for us. We're one step, one piece closer to becoming a playoff bound team, potentially even a Super Bowl team. We need to lock this guy in. He's healthy. He hasn't had any injuries. Like, we could be looking at, the next AP or, things like that.
True.
They sit down at the negotiation table. They're putting money on the table. They're saying, hey, we're going to sign you for a 5-year contract for, however much it's going to be. Let's just say it's like, you're going to be like the top paid running back in the league. At this point, he can look them in the eyes and say, I appreciate it, but the fact that you chose to ask me those questions at the combine, it made me feel a certain type of way, but I was going to burn that bridge at the moment because this is my livelihood. And this is something that a lot of people were talking about. Whether or not an reaction, as the two of you both mentioning, is worth the risk of your career. And think of it as a business person, no, it's not worth my career. Get my foot in the door, do what I have to do. You want to show them that you're important. You want to show them that you have high value. Not just to, the people in the trenches with you, but to the franchise as a whole. So now suddenly, he says, I understand that, but, matters beyond my control. I'm not going to accept this contract. So now we're looking at, he just left us high and dry. What's going on here? He ended up going to another competitor, and a competitor in which he respects the executive more so because the executive spoke to him like a human being, instead of looking at him as a analytical monkey, so to speak, to try to get a rise out of him.
I mean, if that's the case, he literally could have just said, hey, I don't want to play here. Don't draft me.
But you can't. Certain players can get away with that, and you can agree with this. Certain players have gotten away with that.
He's one of the top 5 running backs in the draft. Outside of, Shaquan Barkley, everybody else is going late first, early second, I would say late. But depending on how the draft lies.
But had he chose to say, I don't want you to draft me, I'm offended by these questions, and then get up and leave, now all of a sudden he became late first, early second, maybe mid second, down to 7th, 8th round.
Didn't happen to Eli Manning.
Yeah, because of influences.
My dad, and it wasn't even him; it was dad. We don't want to play for the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
But did Eli say anything though?
Did he? Who cares?
But we're talking about the players now. So now you brought the father
player, and he still was.
So what we're talking about right now, we're talking about the players themselves.
He still was traded.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't have to say anything. His dad said it for him. Think about it like this. He didn't say anything to rebut what his dad said. So that was just as bad as him saying it.
But it would have been even worse if he said anything.
Why not? Hey, my dad is saying I don't want to play. He could have said, I'll play anywhere. And that would have been just as good as him saying, I wanted to play for the Chargers. He didn't say anything. That means he didn't want to play for the Chargers either.
Or he could have just been, you know what? I just want to let my play speak for itself. Wherever I go, I go. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you because you're right.
I get it.
I get what you're saying,
but this guy, he literally could be a homosexual. His mom could have been a prostitute. Mm-hmm. Yet he answered the questions the way he wanted to. In all honesty, we don't really know what really happened. These could be true facts.
This could be true facts.
But this
just could be global, nationwide fake news for all we care.
It really could be. But ultimately, we're appalled because, like you said, we're personalizing it. Which I get it. I wouldn't want to be asked these questions, even though I know my mom wasn't a prostitute, and I know
Oh
I'm
no,
not
and it's
gay.
just it's not as much as whether or not it's true or not. It's the fact that someone had the galls to look Doc Ocean, the Duke, Professor John Gotti, and I, and ask them these lines of questionings. Like,
But see, I think that's where Duke's point came in because we don't know if
exactly.
they ask these questions every year, every candidate. We don't know. So
Well,
if this is something
technically we
that's
do know
in their
because
culture to ask,
we do have trail history of other players being asked that all the way back to 2010. So we do know that these lines of
that's eight
questions have been
years.
asked.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, are
I
they?
mean, for
I
all
don't
we
know if the
know,
NFL
it could
at
be
this
happening
point,
much more
obviously not,
longer,
but if they
but
can govern, hey, you can't ask that question anymore. They probably can't govern that because it's like it's really he say she say unless it's recorded. And I imagine athletes aren't able to bring their phones in, so really they can ask them anything they want.
and I'm
I mean, the
so
whole
glad
idea
you
of the
mentioned
combine
that.
really is kind of intrusive anyway. I mean, they're
Hmm.
bending you up, they're poking you, they're touching you, and I mean, they're really up in your grill.
They are.
Really, I mean, they're really close and personal with you. I mean, at this point, if they wanted to stick their finger in your butt just to make sure that you didn't like men, I mean, as long as nobody else said anything, they really could do that because they're twisting and turning and they're doing all kinds of things to their bodies. So at that point, I mean, to ask someone if they're gay, I mean, at that point, I mean, they've already been kind of manhandled.
I mean, here's my take on it. It won't happen.
I don't think so
And
either.
this is exactly why. That one question that may have offended you 3 years ago, is that really enough to trump the 3 years that you spent with your team, the 3 years that you spent with the coaching staff, the 3 years that you spent in this city, the 3 years that you spent with these fans?
And the 5 year extension for $70 million.
Exactly.
It
Is
depends
that
on the player.
really going to be enough to
It depends
trump?
on the player. It really
I don't
depends on
think
the
so.
player.
Because at the end of the day, your goal is to make money. So unless some other team is offering you more money, or unless you literally have some moral disagreement with what happened and you have voiced these past 3 years your intent to leave, I just don't see it happening.
And honestly, I would also go on to say that I would say there is no chance that the coach or whoever else, when they draft him, they say, why we asked that question was blah blah blah, and then it'll be all swept under the rug because they could make up something. We only asked that question to see how you would react.
Hmm.
We don't really.
Exactly.
They just gonna. It's gonna be a real PR answer. We don't care if you're homosexual or not. We just wanted to ask who you are, because you're gonna get that question similar to what the Duke said. You're gonna get that question over and over and over, and we wanted to make sure, hey, that you can handle yourself. Even if they don't believe it, they would say it. But I mean, I definitely could understand where you would come from and why you would say that, because hey, this is gonna leave a bad taste in my mouth. But ultimately, they could say, you know what, if I'm available, please skip me. And if the media finds out about that, then he's going to have even bigger problems. Then there'll probably be sources out that his mother was a prostitute and he was gay, which will make it even worse.
This is true.
And he falls to the seventh round or
So
undrafted.
basically, it would have been a lose-lose situation.
Absolutely. To an extent. If he would have said, don't draft me, and then this report would have came out, he might have fell down to the third round. But if he says, no, I'm not gay, but I don't want to play for you, why would you ask me such ridiculous questions? Which knowing me, I probably would have asked, like, oh, that's an interesting question. Why would you ask that? Oh, and they would have probably just said, oh, just curious. No, I would have just said no. You know what I mean? Like, I wouldn't even give any excuses or explanations. No. And just
And
move
again, I
on.
mean, to Doc's credit, the combine is very invasive, and we test you on every other level. Why wouldn't we test this?
Right. Right. And that's
And
the
it's
whole thing.
Yeah, especially in, today's age where everybody is essentially a reporter. Anybody could snap a picture or a video of you at the store, at the gym, at the whatever. and next thing you know, it's going viral. I need to be able to safeguard my team, the league, my franchise, and my name from that as much as possible.
To the point to where you're degrading one of your assets.
Potential assets, and
Potential.
again, I'm not degrading him. I am asking a question. He is more than capable of either answering it or not answering it if he feels like it, and I make my decision based off of that.
Because technically, he could have said no comment or something crazy like that.
I'm just saying.
Technically, he could have not answered it. He could have been like, and it really doesn't matter if his answer. And that's the part that's kind of crazy with the whole questioning is like he could have just been like no. You know what I mean? Like, and it would have been so pointless. Like, oh, you don't want to elaborate? No, I'm only here so I don't get fined. You know what I mean? Like, I'm only here.
Pretty much.
So, I'm only here so I can get drafted. You know what I mean? Like, no.
But again, it tells me what type of player you're going to be, how I need to approach you in this coaching style, because we've all been in locker rooms and we've all heard what goes down in locker rooms and on sidelines.
True.
And it is in no ways a PC culture. So
Right.
if the coach is sitting here because you made a bad play and I'm calling you every name under the sun, are you going to get offended and storm off the field?
And not be able to perform anymore.
Exactly. Let me know that now before I waste all this money and energy in you.
Yeah, but that's different though.
How
Because
is it different?
they've dealt with that since they were kids. So you can't really put the whole coaching grooming into him as an example though. In my
Not
opinion.
Why not? If I'm sitting here, if I am sitting here as, the owner, the recruiter, the front office of this organization, and I am not even your coach. I'm not even the one that's sitting here berating you with personal information that I know about you. And I ask you a question that is so, again, in today's day and age, not even an uncommon question, and you get offended by it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not saying
How-
that you're getting offended by it. I'm just saying you stated that you needed someone mentally tough to deal with, sitting in a locker room and basically getting degraded by your coach. Like, they've dealt with that
Well,
their whole life. I'm just trying to get
and
why
again,
you would say
Depends.
that.
It depends because there are some players today, like the kids today they are completely different from the kids from us
they're
as
soft.
kids.
You can just go
They
ahead and
are a
say it.
lot,
They're
yeah,
soft.
they are a lot softer. They don't like being yelled at. They really don't like to be disciplined. Like it's a completely different world. Like I mean, completely different world. And the coaches these days, especially in college, like yeah, they're yelling, but they're not as tough on the kids as they used to be. So by the time they get to college, they may have been yelled at to an extent, but if you get yelled at too many times, now there's so many players that you just be like, I'll just replace you.
And I
Yeah.
mean, again, I'm not even saying that it only applies to those situations, but I am saying that it speaks to your mental fortitude that sometimes you can just shrug stuff off. I know that this question is not personal. I know that this question is not necessarily aimed at me, or even if it is, screw it. You don't know me well enough for this to get under my skin. But will
So,
it?
so you're saying is that they should just endure it and not apply that towards future decisions. That was my whole soliloquy was about making their awkward questioning and allowing that to influence future decisions. It's not about whether or not you're personally, you know, feeling upset about it. You feel a certain type of way about it. You feel on
Hmm.
tilt or feeling salt about it. But
Right.
the line of questioning influencing what you're going to do later. Because you're looking at it as
But they're
well.
one
I
and the
mean,
same.
does this
What you're
show
saying is
that
one and
you're
the same.
naturally curious about
Uh,
me, or are you just saying this just to ask me? Because you can have a come a heart to heart, man to man meeting, because as people like to say, football's a man's game.
Hmm.
So you can have that heart to heart meeting, find out how the person is, love with the person, and get that understanding to understand them on a mental level as well too. without
But
having to.
here's the
And
thing.
I'm not saying that the questions are wrong. I still have yet to say the questions are wrong. But I'm trying to
Right, right.
say is, and this is an alternate solution, you can still have those man-to-man meetings because they can still do that, and they can have everything out there on the table, so they can understand how they are as a player, as a human being, where they are mentally. What is their actual level of endurance when it comes to certain things, and everything could still be gravy. I'm trying to say, is that an applicable solution towards this, or are we just more of a, well, I mean, I understand it's the line of questioning, so everything's great as long as they don't overreact.
No. And again, here's the thing. I'm not sitting down to have a man-to-man conversation with you at the combine. No reporter, unless maybe go the Montel Williams route, is going to sit down and have a man-to-man conversation with you. I'm going to ask my questions. I expect you to answer my questions. How you answer my questions are going to then affect what I do next. That is how interviews work, typically. And again, if the whole point of this is to get you on tilt, then I need to get you on tilt. And again, to your point, with your example, it is kind of one and the same. Because fine, you may not react any way about this today, but if you still react about this 3 years from now, this is just me, myself personally, I wouldn't necessarily want you on my team. That's a long time to hold a grudge, and God only knows what else you've been holding on to. You are a ticking time bomb.
All right, so this would be my last opinion on it. I think that if it was a regular job, and I think we can't compare this to ourselves, and this is a regular job, because if somebody asked us this in a regular interview or anything like this, we could just say thank you, but no thank you. I think because this is, something that, he could get paid millions of dollars for, something that he's been dreaming of. This is his dream job, and he's coming into it, looking like, hey, they're asking me these questions about my sexual orientation. It's kind of ridiculous. I don't know if I can say anything. Personally, my stance on burning bridges. I mean, if I don't care, I don't care. Like, I don't know which team it was that asked them this,
I don't think they'll
but
reveal the team. They don't
and
reveal the
that's
team.
okay. And that's okay.
That's actually
Um,
smart.
Yeah.
it is, but to me, it's like he was asked whether he likes men and if his mother sells herself. It To me, if somebody asked me this and I was truly offended, I would have told them right then and there that I was offended, regardless, because I believe in myself. And of course, I would be in full support of my parent. You know what I mean? No amount of money would represent the respect or disrespect in this situation that I would have for my mother and that they would be allowed to show to my mother. So to me, if somebody would have came out and said something like this to me, regardless of the bridge that I would have burned, I would have made sure that they knew that I didn't like the questioning, and I would have answered it according to how I felt. So to me, if I wouldn't have blown up, of course, because that's just not what I would do, but I would have answered the question and told him that I felt disrespected that you would even ask me a foolish question. I would have went Stephen A. Smith on him probably.
That is blasphemous.
That's blasphemous. I can't believe you just said that. And I would have flipped it. But to me, we can't compare it to a regular job because, to be honest, this isn't a regular job. They're going to get paid millions of dollars to play a game that people are playing for free.
Right.
In high school, semi-pro, and Pop Warner, and you've done all these things to get to a point where now people are about to invest millions of dollars into you, and these people feel like, hey, I should be able to ask them anything I want because I'm investing into them. And I guess, not to go too deep off the far end, but that's where people feel like, the draft, free agency, football as a whole, sports as a whole, people kind of have a slave mentality. The fact that people on the combine are running, they're lifting, they're on display for owners, coaches, scouts, that's where it kind of comes to a point where you can ask them anything. It's almost similar to an owner saying, "Hey, can you read?" to a slave. It would have been the same exact thing, but it's just football in this situation. So it's almost as if you're an athlete, you're a dollar sign, you are a stock. And we are asking you not as a person, but as a stock. Before we invest in you, are you gay? And did your mother sell herself? Because that could lower your stock.
And yeah, that's
And
exactly
that's
what it is.
and that's kind of how it comes down. You know what I mean? I hate it that it's like that, but it's the truth.
Yeah, that is exactly it. But I mean, I'll leave y'all with this, man. Sticks and stones, sticks and stones. Like sometimes, and really honestly, I mean, look, if you look back on this 5 years from now, we'll probably just shrug our shoulders and laugh because I guarantee you something more ridiculous is coming around the bend.
I agree. I mean, they probably ask ridiculous questions like, "Hey, do you like to dress in women's clothing?" Or,
You know,
like
have you ever rode a giraffe?
right. I'm sure it gets really, really ridiculous. Um, but at the end of the day, I mean, we have to. I mean, all we can do is sit back and watch because that would never happen to us in real life because we wouldn't accept it. Like, I wish the Professor John Gotti would come home and say, "Hey, I went on an interview, and somebody asked me if I shaved my balls or not." Like, what? They asked you what, bro?
Yo, what did you answer?
Yeah, like how'd you answer that?
I mean, I would
Man.
tell him a couple of things that probably isn't fit for a up and coming professional.
I was
But it's
just
your
saying,
dream
man,
job. It's your
And
it's
dream.
your dream job,
and since
yeah.
it's my dream job, I will make sure that the interviewer will be sitting there crying after I finish, and
I
then
mean
leave
that.
by saying "shattered dreams, dream over."
I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, that's the reality of it. And that's just your daily dose,
Hey, I mean, I guess for and of course I did all this just to be devil's advocate
of
because you need to
course.
happen. But I mean, just like you said, sometimes a daily dose of reality is needed.
This is true. This is true.
And
Um,
some players, would rather hang on to their pride. Other players, hey, sometimes you gotta live the dream. You gotta sacrifice your pride a little bit.
Absolutely. And I guess he did. He would have had to because he went through the interview.
Mm-hmm.
Just
And that's
saying.
the point, ladies and gentlemen. That is the point. But we're
Yeah,
about to go into our next subject. We're gonna let the Duke go. Thank you very much for joining us for this segment, and looking forward to the next edition of Duke It Out. You want to tell the people about that before you go?
It's a mystery bag, but I will say, go out and vote on that last top five list because Duchess is eagerly awaiting the results to see if she beat us. I don't think so, but that's just
When
me.
she beat you.
wow.
I'm gonna look at the polls real quick. It looks like Duchess that's a pretty good score for Duchess, and the Duke is right there too. And John Gotti, he's starting to catch up a little bit. Yeah, looks pretty good right now.
Word, word.
Unfortunately, it looks
But
like Duchess just lost the first place.
wah, wah.
But thank you very much, sir. Be sure to catch Duke It Out every other Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Mm,
Right here on
well,
YouTube and on Twitch, and also be sure to catch them on the podcast for offline listening on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, and other podcast applications.
yeah, thanks for having me, gentlemen.
No
I
problem.
appreciate you coming on, sir.
Take care, sir.
My man, the Duke.
Yeah, man. So, let's go to our next subject, sir.
Yes,
We
sir.
have a hectic, exciting, dare I say, almost legendary NFL offseason. And you mentioned how much you loved the offseason, Doc.
I do.
A lot of moves has happened since the start of the off season, where people can get signed, people can get traded, people can get cut and released, and people can retire.
Hmm.
Notable people. So,
I would start with, the one of the best defensive players, I would say, Ndamukong Suh getting
mm-hmm.
cut. I thought that was pretty interesting. Definitely interested to see where he goes. I'm not sure if there's a huge market out for him. I think it probably will go a couple of days, maybe even a week or so before he's signed. I mean, he's a great player, but I feel like the on the field antics, as well as the
The lack of maturity.
questionable yeah, questionable work ethic. I think a lot of people question his work ethic and if he has the ability to play every down. But there have been some people who have said that his next contract, he may take less money just so that he would be able to play in the Super Bowl. So that is very well possible. But I'll be interested to see where he goes. Of course, I would somewhat welcoming him in Tampa. I know we just signed actual two defensive tackles. I would have accepted him in Tampa, but we just signed two defensive tackles. Um, I always wanted to see him and Gerald play together. It's just been a dream of mine, but I don't think it's going to happen. Second to me, not overly shocking, but shocking at the same time. The Green Bay Packers cutting Jordy Nelson, I thought was a shocker.
I think it's only a shocker that it happened this year instead of next, in my opinion.
Well, I'll say this. I know I have a few Green Bay Packer fans as friends, and I know a lot of them have been saying that, especially one friend in particular, King Cobra himself, he said that the Packers aren't used to paying their wide receivers big bucks. So the fact that Jordy Nelson got the big contract was pretty shocking to them. But then also he got the injury, um, and I think that kind of messed up his stock last year. Of course, he comes back, and he's okay, but now you're talking about an overpaid okay. So they went out, signed Jimmy Graham, and then they went ahead and let go of Jordy Nelson. I just found it to be crazy that they did such a thing.
I can understand that. Um, I think the other notable moves that's been happening, the Kansas City Chiefs looking to stack up their offense, as well
Mhm.
as the Cleveland Browns been making some
Cleveland has
splashes.
done a great job. They have done a fantastic job. I give Cleveland a lot of credit. I really feel like they have turned their franchise around with a number of people. I mean, they're handing out money. They've become better at several different levels.
Mm.
They've already replaced their tackle, Joe Thomas, who just retired. They've brought in several defensive players, several offensive players, and for the most part, it looks like they got some great value. A lot of $3 and $4 and $5 million deals for them to get better. So I think the Browns did a great job, and I would agree. I think the not only the Chiefs, I believe you said, but the Rams got better
I'll agree with that too.
by bringing in sure two questionable corners, personality and character wise, but Akeem Talib and Marcus Peters. I mean, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they also got Robbie Coleman, Nickel Robbie Coleman, 3 years,
I
fifteen
mean,
point 75 million too. So I mean that could be the new no-fly zone out
and
there in
this
LA. You know,
And they already have a
just
corner that's
just like
pretty
just like
good.
the real LAX airport.
Wow. Wow. I can't believe you just said that.
But another team that's been really surprising, and I forgot to mention it during the introductions of it, the Chicago Bears. They went out and they got Allen Robinson, who was with the Jaguars last year. Taylor Gabriel. They re-signed Trey Burton for a 4-year, 32 million.
Hmm.
They re-signed Prince Amukamara for a 3-year, 27 million. I mean, their offensive side is looking way better. Definitely buying into Mitchell Trubisky.
I think Allen Robinson will definitely help. I mean, I'm not sure if they made the notable, moves enough to take that next step, but I mean, hopefully they can draft well as and you know, hopefully take themselves to the next level.
I agree. I do agree.
Um, but other than that, I mean, a lot of re-signings. Of course, there's going to be more re-signings to go. I know that the big deal, of course, that we didn't talk about the obvious here, the Minnesota Vikings getting Kirk Cousins, which is very weird.
It is a very
As
weird situation.
I spoke to you know uh, some people here, and they just didn't feel like Kirk Cousins is that good.
Hmm.
Um, but it is what it is, and they have him. So we'll see exactly what
I
happens.
feel like he has the
Uh,
potential to put some work in.
I didn't think it was enough for them to get rid of Keenum or any of the other guys that they had. I just didn't think that. I didn't think that it was enough. I think the Broncos, really improved by getting Case Keenum over Trevor Simeon,
Yep.
who did go to the Vikings also.
Yeah, the Viking situation, they're literally just losing so much money. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Other notable ones, the Jets got Teddy Bridgewater for a 1-year, $5 million contract.
Yeah, I like Teddy B. I don't know what they're gonna do. If they're gonna keep McCown. I know they re-signed him, but I thought that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I like the fact that they got Isaiah Crowell,
Hmm.
um, and I would be interested to see what other pieces they add as they try to get better.
I will agree with that. Keeping it within the tri-state area, the New York Giants signed Jonathan Stewart for a 2-year, $6.9 million contract. Uh, Decided to get left tackle Nate Soldier, a long-time New England Patriot, for 4 years, $62
Which is a
million
big
dollars.
deal.
That's a
Big
big deal.
deal.
That's a big deal.
That's a huge deal. I think Nate Solder signed, solves a problem that they had. I was actually talking to one Giant fan in which we agreed that maybe they can move Eric Flowers either to the right side or inside to guard. So that's definitely a good look.
Very good look. And the other one, they got a trade with the Rams to get Alec Ogletree.
Yeah, which we did talk about last week. Definitely for the second. I think it was just for the sixth round pick. Um, really good trade. Um, he should really help them because their linebackers are terrible.
Their linebackers are the worst, if not the worst. Period. Let's
Uh,
see who else. Miami Dolphins signed Danny Amendola or Danny
I thought,
Playoff for a 2-year,
uh,
$12 million contract. I
I
think
thought,
they definitely got this deal done because A, Danny's not getting paid anything in New England. Let's just be honest with that. And
yeah.
B, they can try to utilize his knowledge of Belichick's offense for their defense.
And I think Amendola left before and didn't really do too well. So I'm not. I don't know about that one.
Well, wasn't he with what team was he with before he went to Patriots?
Well, he went to the Patriots and he left the Patriots. I feel like he went to the Rams, I believe.
Yeah, it was the Rams. And the Dolphins also got Robert Quinn via trade with the Rams too.
Absolutely.
So I mean, they're making some moves, and we mentioned Kansas City, Sammy Watkins, Jarvis Jenkins, Anthony Hitchkins, who played with the Cowboys.
Cowboys. Mm-hmm.
You know, they re-signed Terrence Smith, and they got Kendall Fuller from the Redskins trade, which is the Alex Smith trade.
Which I think is they definitely done well. I don't know if it's enough for them to advance. We got to see how the young quarterback you know fares.
Hmm. Uh,
But we'll
let's see. Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they kind of improved their wide receiver situation. They lost Allen, so they got Marquise Lee and Dante Moncrief. You know, some pretty good mid route running QBs, wide receivers.
I think they just really improved by signing Andrew Norwell, who was one of the top,
Yes.
yeah, one of the top guards. Um, I think Marquise Lee, I think he was on Jacksonville at one point, and they brought him back. And
Hmm.
Moncrief hasn't really had a chance to, really shine just yet. But I think that if given an opportunity, he can be a great addition.
Absolutely. I mean, anything else as far as notable people who's been signed, traded, cut?
I think if I had to say anyone else, I mean, the only person we're really waiting for, honestly, is Des Bryant.
Nope, I'm not gonna talk about Des Bryant. Moving on.
But no, other than that, I think there was some key defensive linemen that were signed. I like what the Buffalo Bills did by re-signing Kyle Williams. They brought in
Yep.
Star Latulele and Trent Murphy. I think their defensive line is going to be so much better.
As well as their
I did.
linebacker, they brought in Julian Stanford too.
Yeah, but the other three signings are so much bigger. Just the defensive linemen there, I thought that's pretty huge. Just those three defensive linemen. Um, Other than that, I
Oh,
think everyone else made some pretty
significant
small. There's some
changes.
smaller news.
Yes.
Like if the Saints would have lost Drew Brees, then that would have been something big. But
No, he's gonna
I
retire
think
as a Saint.
Yeah, I think the Eagles obtaining Haloti Nada and getting Michael Bennett. I
Yep.
thought that was pretty big. Um, Surprising enough, the Steelers haven't done anything.
Nope.
That's one thing that I thought was pretty interesting that the Steelers haven't made any moves yet. But other than that, I feel like the time really has just begun. So I think we'll have to see exactly what happens.
I can understand that. So the people, they're yelling in my ear. They're asking me to ask you this question: is the AFC East back? Will it be a non-Patriot dominated division now?
Mm, I think the only team that's really, really gotten better is the Bills. They signed AJ McCarron today, who I think is a pretty solid quarterback. They get some defensive tackles who can actually plug and fill. Um, I think they got better. I mean, if the Jets start, Teddy Bridgewater, maybe. Um, and I don't think the Dolphins got a whole lot better. I mean, they have a big hole now with Sue gone. I know they bring in Robert Quinn, but I'm not sure. It really just depends because I know that they may be looking, to move on from their quarterback situation, and it's just a weird thing that they're doing.
I definitely understand that. I mean, if you have no other notable news about that, we can get into the. Oh, oh, my arm hurts.
Uh
It's telling
oh,
me it's time to talk about the madness.
not the madness.
The madness. Ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow begins March Madness. NCAA men's and women's basketball tournament. Doc and Prof have created brackets for a group that we have on ESPN.com to allow you, the people, to compete against us. The name of the group on ESPN.com is called Bracketing Amongst Friends. So
Hilarious.
if you wish to join us, definitely come out and find us on there and sign up. We put links to join us out in our Facebook pages and our Twitter accounts as well too at the Beta Fra. So if you get yourself a chance, go ahead and check it out. And if not, we appreciate the fact that you at least looked at the article.
Wow. You're funny.
So let's talk about brackets. Let's talk about these teams.
Which conference did you want to start in?
Conference.
Southeast,
Oh,
West, Midwest.
I
I'm looking
mean
at them as conferences. I don't know any other word for
regions.
them. Regions. There you go.
Yeah,
Regions,
that sounds
conference.
like conferences. What?
Same
So
difference.
let's start from the South because breaking news for everyone: the sixth man of University of Virginia is now officially out for the tournament. Um, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's a pretty big deal. Doc says it's not so much because he's just a sixth man, but I mean, sometimes that sixth man's he's an energy guy. He
I
definitely
think
helps bring
you're.
things along.
I just think you might be putting too much on this six man because I mean they're a great team basketball player. So the seventh man could be just as good as the sixth man. Because even this article here from the Washington Post says, despite DeAndre Hunter's injury, you should still pick Virginia because of their defense. Like they're such a swarming defense
Oh
that
well,
I don't think his injury is going to.
I still have them going deep. So, like, I'm just trying to, do my job and be devil's advocate.
I mean, he only. I mean, and this is no disrespect to him, of course, but I mean, he's only scoring 9 points a game.
That's actually pretty funny. That
Yeah, I
is
mean,
very
uh,
disrespectful.
I mean, I'm not trying to play him out, but
Playing like a fiddle,
I mean, 9 points a game. I
making him sound
mean,
like he's trash.
I'm just saying. They play great team basketball. That's really what I want to say. But I mean, I think that's it's interesting news. I don't think that is something that's taken lightly. He is the fourth highest scorer on the team. They do have other players who I believe could step in and play pivotal roles. Um, I really like Kyle Guy. I got a chance to watch them play against North Carolina, and just felt like, hey, they have an opportunity to go deep if they continue to play that tough defense. Um, I don't know. Maybe they'll feel DeAndre Hunter's injury if they go into a slump at all.
I totally agree with you. But I mean, they're facing off against UMBC in the first round. We both had them as, you know, destroying them.
Well, I
Um,
haven't done my bracket yet,
well, I
but
had them
you're
destroying
right
them,
though.
but yeah.
Yeah, you're right though. Um, but I mean, I don't know if we should go too far into the brackets just yet because we
Well,
don't
we're
want
not gonna
to.
go. We're not gonna go each level. We're just gonna talk about certain teams in there, find out, whether or not we feel they would make a good run or not. So
Okay,
that's why we're starting off with Virginia because there's a number one seed.
sure.
Another team that made some noise. Mm, Cincinnati as a number two seed.
Well, I know that they, being the ESPN team, they were really shocked that Cincinnati was number two. Again, another tough, gritty team that plays some great defense. Um, I think they could potentially go far. Georgia State, you know, I think they should beat Georgia State. I think they might struggle a little bit against Texas, but I don't think they'll really start to, really get down until we get to that Sweet 16,
Yes.
you know, um, Elite Eight level.
I mean, we're still, you mentioned that they're gritty. They're the second best offensive rebounding team in the nation. Um,
And that shows, that's a lot of
Second chance
determination.
points.
Yeah, and
Yes.
that they've always been a tough team. Even at the time years ago when you're talking about, um, Kenyon Martin being there,
Hmm.
they were tough. They've always been tough, and you got to give them credit for still, sticking to who they are.
Absolutely. I mean, speaking of tough, gritty teams, you mentioned Texas. We,
Hmm.
probably can assume we both have Texas and Cincinnati faced off against each other.
Right.
I believe
It's
that
tough though because
is.
Nevada could easily come and play, but I believe that Texas would be in that matchup.
Well, it's definitely going to be a game. Like
Hmm.
I actually had them face off against each other in the round of 32. But I mean, Texas, you're talking about a lanky team. Um,
Hmm.
we have the third best shot blocker in the nation on their squad. So I mean, they get the rebounds. I think the only issue with them is their lack of being able to score. They
Right.
average about 71 points per game, but they only allow less than 70, so it's great. But if they end up getting into a shootout, they're going to be in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's move over to the East. We have number one Villanova.
Yeah, I mean, Villanova should run the floor on Radford. Really, they should run it. They really have. It looks like they have one of the easiest paths to the
They
Final
have
Four.
the easiest path.
Depending on how people play. I mean, this could be one of those bracket busters. If they go to face up against like a West Virginia team, um, and you just never know with a team like Wichita State. You just
I
never know
don't
what kind of
know.
team you're gonna get for
I
them.
don't know if I have West Virginia making out of the first round against Murray. Is that
Wow.
5-12?
Mm, I don't know. I mean, West Virginia is pretty good, based on the team that I saw play. Um, I don't know. It's tough to say. It's
I
tough
know.
to say.
But I mean, you mentioned Wichita State. I've always really enjoyed the team philosophy, being able to, we keep mentioning just grittiness.
Hmm.
It's just something that I really enjoy. Plus, they're a small school, so I like those, small schools beating the crap out of bigger schools. Hopefully they can make another run. They're not the team that they was before when they had Van Fleet and Clancy Early and Ron Baker, but
Hmm.
they're a team that can still make a lot of noise.
Absolutely.
I mean, they won their conference. Um, once again, it's just their defense is always the issue. You know, they just have to grind it out every single
Absolutely.
night.
Absolutely. I think that it's going to be interesting. I mean, they play an interesting style of offense, so I'm interested to see how far they can go. I feel like they always play great in the first game or two, but then they kind of fizzle out. But we'll definitely have to watch and see how they do.
Absolutely. I know you mentioned Florida before. I didn't know if you had anything to say about them.
Well, I mean, I think Florida always is another team that plays tough. Butler, these teams that you just have to worry about because I think their experience in the tournament usually comes to play. Um, I I think Butler is just one of those teams that in the past they've just been really really consistent. And although a
Yes.
lot of these teams don't play ultimately well down the stretch, sometimes I just feel like these are teams that you have to watch who will bust your bracket.
Yes. I mean,
You
speaking
know,
of which, Butler is 234th in the nation in effective field goal percentage. So, they kind of have a problem, being efficient when it comes to
hmm
getting the ball in the basket. But, I mean, they're pretty high up in rankings when it comes to defensive rebounds. Actually just rebounding. Period. Um, Actually, no, just defensive rebounds. Offensive rebounds, they're like terrible. They're like 275th in the nation.
Mm. But
So
you
they
just
don't.
never know. I
So they don't
mean, the
really clean
magic,
up. But just like you
the
said, both of
magic
these
of the
teams are
tournament,
very, very gritty, and anything can happen.
the,
That's why it's the
the
madness, Lazy.
magic, yes, the magic of the tournament. You just never know.
You just never know. We can have a Cinderella team. I'm looking forward to a
Absolutely,
Cinderella team.
of course, of course.
So let's get away from the East. Let's go to the West. Xavier.
I don't know. Um, I do know that they're a good team.
They're
Their
a
first
very
game,
good team.
yeah, their first game. I think their first game obviously is a wash practice game. The second game,
Well, they face off against Texas Southern, because Texas
well,
Southern
I
won
did
their
see that.
playing game.
I did see that. If they play Florida State in the second game,
Hmm.
I could see Florida State giving them trouble. I think they would know what to expect from Missouri, but from Florida State, again, those Florida teams that come in, you just never know, what you're going to get. And Florida State, historically, from the last couple of years, has been a great defensive team. But Xavier is one of the best in the country.
They are one of the best in the country. Not so much that they'll blow you out, but they'll
Right.
make you pay for your mistakes.
Absolutely. Um,
And plus, they got a chip on their shoulder this year.
they do. They
A lot of
do.
their players, they just embrace that Xavier lifestyle, that David West, it's us against the world kind of mentality.
Mhm.
Like, you don't have to like us, but you're going to respect our play. And that's what I like about them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ohio State faced off against South Dakota State in the first round. Ohio State's great football school, basketball team, you know, hit or miss.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
you
I
know,
wouldn't be
um,
surprised if that's an upset.
I do have that as an
Yeah,
upset.
I wouldn't be surprised if that's an upset.
But people had them 80-20 against South Dakota State, so who knows? But they
Right.
do have perennial NBA hopeful Keita Bates Jop, who was the
Hmm.
player of the year this year, averaging 19 points, 8 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks a game. So I mean that's pretty good.
This is true.
But I think everything rides on him. From what I'm seeing and what I'm reading, it doesn't seem like anyone else really steps up, which is kind of the
Right.
way that Ohio State works. Like even back when what's his name who played there.
You talking about the guy that went to the Trailblazers?
Yes,
Dang, he didn't play so much, so I can't really remember his name
it's
now.
cool. We don't care about him then.
Wow. Uh,
Gonzaga faced off against North Carolina Greensboro. I mean Gonzaga, another gritty team.
yeah,
I mean they
playoff experience, championship experience. I
championship
mean,
experience.
tournament experience.
Yes. I mean, there was the runner up last year. They
Hmm.
definitely want to have revenge. They're gonna come back more hungrier. Unfortunately, NC Greensboro is gonna have to endure that first round wrath.
Right.
But I mean, I could see them, possibly making it to the Sweet 16. Gonzaga.
Possibly.
They have firepower.
Unfortunately, unfortunately, losing to Xavier if that happens. But I mean, that's neither here nor there.
I see it here or there. Let's see what other teams on this side. Michigan, which is another
Michigan,
very very solid team.
yes, and then you would finish up with a UNC team, University of National Chumps.
Let's talk about Providence because that's one team that I've always liked heading into the tournament, not because of their play or their players, but because I really love their logo. I don't know why. It's been ever since I was a kid. I love their logo.
I mean, you did go to work at one of the banks. Didn't they have a bank named Providence too?
There is a Provident Bank, not Providence.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the one with the beehive as the logo. But I never worked
Oh
there
my
though.
God.
I worked
It
next to
was
it.
next
That
to
was
it. That's what it
normal. That
was.
was wait, we can't say those.
Yeah, we can't say that. That's why I said Providence. Okay. Um. So you like their logo?
I just like their logo, so I always pick them.
Wow.
I always pick them because of that. Like I'm that person when it comes to just that team, but I
I
don't have them
understand.
going deep.
So you have them over Texas A&M and then losing to UNC or to
Yes.
Lip Lipscomb.
Right. I mean, so we know there's a lot of UNC fans out there, and if UNC gets upset by Lipscomb, they're gonna be on tilt. They're gonna be salty. They're
Which
gonna
I've
have
never
to
even heard of
endure
that
the
team.
Docs trolling from
Oh,
here until the championship game and even beyond,
absolutely.
because they lost to number 15 Lipscomb.
Which I've never even heard of Lipscomb. So
Which and I was mentioning this, one day during lunch, that I never even heard of this team.
it
But
sounds
they're
like
from the
something that
Atlantic Sun
Stanley.
Conference.
It sounds like a team that Stanley Ipkiss made up.
I see what you did there. But I mean, we gotta see what happens. I mean, they still have a really, really good record, 23-9. It's better than
True.
UNC's record, just
This is
record-wise. We're
true.
not talking about strength of
Hey,
schedule. We're not talking
hey,
about competition. We're just talking about straight numbers, homie.
hey, hey. But yeah,
Because
UNC
people are
of
gonna get
course is
upset because
there.
we try to
I get
downplay UNC's success during the year because they have 10 losses.
University of National Champs. I get it.
I see what you did there.
But let's move on to the other side where the real North Carolina team is.
So
And
we're
I
gonna
don't
move
mean
on
NC
now. No, I'm just
State.
joking. I, I'm sorry, Jay Rich asked me to do that for him.
Sure, he
That
did.
was for him.
Sure. Any upsets in this particular first round that you see of the Midwest?
Uh-oh. So you're not gonna be happy with me.
Wow.
You're not gonna be happy
Wow.
with me at all.
Wow.
Um, but
You have Iona beating Duke? Oh my God.
oh heck no, Duke is gonna eat them for
Oh my
breakfast. Come on,
God.
come on.
Wow.
You
Wow.
want me to tell you why? Because St. Peter's University is not there.
Instead of Seton Hall, you mean?
St. Peter's instead of Iona.
Seton Hall is in that same division, no?
No,
No, they're not.
no.
Seton Hall is
That's
with
why I paused
Rutgers.
and said, "What are you talking about?"
Could you imagine if Duke played St. Peter's? It would have been a bloodbath.
That would have been interesting to watch.
I don't even know who's on St. Peter's
But
basketball.
Seton Hall is part of the Big East.
Should we watch? Should we be watching St. Peter's basketball?
Well, unfortunately, I can't watch it from where I am. But if I
I
could,
mean,
I would, just to see how they're doing.
maybe we should try to find a stream for them, I guess.
I think so. We had Kiki, helping us keep up with some of the stuff that's happening out there. Another alumni for it.
True, true.
Shout out to Kiki.
Um, but that's neither here nor there. They're gonna get spanked either way.
Oh, absolutely.
Uh,
Like it's
Hopefully that
happening.
conference gets better over the next couple
But
of years.
my upsets from the Midwest. I'm putting University of Rhode Island on upset alert
By Oklahoma,
by Oklahoma.
I mean, is that
Because I have NC State beating Seton Hall, but that's not really an upset.
right? Um,
He has to check, ladies and gentlemen.
I do only because I'm trying to figure out. I always get confused on if Trey Young is on Oklahoma or Oklahoma State, and he's on Oklahoma. I mean, is that an upset?
It's not an upset. But he's coming back healthy. Like, I'm giving him one game.
Gotcha.
On
I
one
think
bracket. I'm only getting the one game. The other game, they're getting destroyed. On my other
I,
bracket.
I think a bigger game to look at is some of the other games, like if Bucknell was to beat Michigan State.
Bucknell has the capacity to do so.
You know, if
But
Charleston was to beat,
but
but it's gonna be interesting though.
let's go into, I believe this is our final subject.
Oh yeah.
NBA.
So I think for the NBA, the one thing,
There we go. We lost you for a second, Doc.
did you?
Yes.
Interesting. You know, that they could get anywhere from, the number one overall pick, of course, which everybody's saying is DeAndre Ayton, to, in this mock draft, number six, Wendell Carter Jr., which, I mean, either pick would leave them, in a much better position as they would be able to move on from Tristan Thompson. Um, I just find it to be so crazy in these mock drafts, how, they rank players and, how they put them in different situations. Like in this mock draft, Trae Young goes to the Knicks.
Uh, I feel like we need to
Point
get.
guard.
I know. No. No. I feel like we need to get some height on the team now. We really don't need
Another guard.
another guard. So
I mean, that's just one mock draft, of course. You just never know. I mean, it's some interesting picks on here. I really believe, and I'm always interested to see, one person I always look for, and that is Grayson Allen. I'm always interested to see where Grayson Allen goes because I feel like, depending on where he goes,
mm-hmm.
it might just be interesting. I'm really, really hoping that honestly the Rockets pick him up because I felt like he would be a pretty good scorer. But we'll definitely have to see what happens.
Where does Grayson Allen falls on the mock draft right now?
On this particular one, he's not in the first round, so I imagine he would be a second round player.
I think that'll change if Duke has a really really good tournament.
I mean, there are some players that are better than him. He's a senior, so a lot of times the seniors, they don't get the love. Like I think in this particular mock draft, just looking through it, I mean, mostly all of these players, with the exception of one, two. Yeah, so there's a third one. I would say maybe four out of the about 4 or 5 out of the top 30 picks are freshmen. You have some sprinkled in there, maybe 8 out of 30. But it's a diaper dandy draft these days. Diaper dandy.
Yes.
But it's always interesting to look at and to see. I will say that I hope that the NBA gets a hold of the tanking
Mm-hmm.
because tanking is uncool for the casual fan who might just want to go and watch the game. But other than that,
I mean, all I know is that I definitely need to go to a Mavericks game while it's, Nets dirt cheap right now. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
I can definitely understand that.
This guy buying
You have
tickets for
anything?
$80. What?
Oh my God. You have anything for the NBA besides the, playoff swing coming through?
I mean, the only other thing that people are talking about is that people are. So it's weird, and I get tired of these kind of conversations because, whenever someone try to talk about things like this logically, people say, "Well, it's a different time," kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So there's a couple of debates about Russell Westbrook, comparing him to I believe it was the 2000s teams, showing how many triple doubles he had compared to the people who play there. Well, there's a big problem with that. So Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley doesn't really apply for the 2000 teams.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of just threw them in there.
I remember that. I thought they were in the 90s, but I
They were in
understand.
the 90s.
Mm.
But they included them into it, but it's to try to show that what Russell Westbrook is doing is dominant versus the people in the 90s, people in the 2000s, but, they forget about Jason Kidd. They didn't put Jason Kidd as the point guard.
True.
But,
True.
that's just, things like that. Like, if you're going to make a meme or ask a really, really serious question about basketball, I mean, I know it's more of a final thought, but it's definitely just like, come on, guys. Like, we all know that there's certain players now that's just stack padding. Like, let's just stop it.
And Jason Kidd didn't have he didn't have to really ask his teammates to let him get rebounds either.
Exactly. Like, he got up there and got the rebounds. Like, come on, guys. Come on. Come on. Like Deadpool would say, that's just lazy writing.
Yeah.
Just
it
lazy
is.
writing. The only other thing I can think about talking about is LeBron James, but I'm not gonna do that because I just don't like him.
I understand. And that's okay. That's okay. So we probably should
And
move
welcome
on.
to the Knicks. Troy Williams, who used to be a Rocket.
Don't sound too enthused.
Well, I mean, my Knicks season's forfeited now. I can respect that, but anything can happen. Like, if it builds to something else, I'm all for it. You mentioned me. You heard me say that the same thing last year. Like, it's just gonna keep going on and on and on until they finally start getting some traction with it, and they fire their coach.
And James Dolan resigns.
He's not gonna resign. He has too much of an ego.
James Dolan plus. So we should probably move on to some final thoughts then.
Yes,
I mean,
sir.
NBA has been kind of dry this week, so yeah, some final thoughts.
Yes, sir. So what you got for the people this week?
So, usually not the type of news that I would pick, but I did see that Johnny Manziel got married.
Mazel tov.
Which is again not something I usually would share, but I mean it shows that he's starting to at least be a little more mature. Maybe this was a mature move for him. It just shows me more that he basically might have just been, I don't know if it's a political move or whatever, but he got married this week, which is pretty cool. And my second final thought, speaking of brackets, former President Barack Obama submitted his tournament bracket, and he actually has Michigan State winning the national championship over Virginia. In his final four, he actually has Villanova, Michigan State, North Carolina, and Virginia, which is pretty interesting because they have to go through Duke, of course.
Of course. Oh my goodness. I'm only laughing because that was one of my final thoughts, but that's fine though.
Oh,
That actually helps me out.
I thought about that. That could be one of yours, but I looked at it and I was like, I can't really let this pass us by without at least one of us saying it.
Don't worry,
but we got it done. I guess the only other thing I did read earlier is that Andrew Wiggins was unhappy being the third option on the team, which, of course, they had Tom. He has Tom Thibodeau to blame for that. But, I mean, he just came back from injury. I mean,
and also, I'm going to give him some gaudy advice. Shoot better.
Hey. The fact that they thought that they needed... I mean, the fact that they thought they needed to go out and trade for a player who really shares the same position should tell you all you need to know.
Exactly.
But hey, you're right though. He does need to shoot better. But he's tired of being behind Karl Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler.
Yep. Well, that's too bad because if you learn how to shoot better, become a 30-point scorer, on an average basis, a nightly basis, then we would be having this discussion. But my final thoughts, I'm going to give a birthday shout out to the chef, two-time NBA champion, two-time NBA MVP, the only unanimous MVP in NBA history, celebrating his 30th birthday. It is Steph Curry.
We really forgot about those injuries.
Yeah, that's fine. Steph Curry, of course, is out with an injury. He rolled his ankle. And also breaking news, Klay Thompson is also out for a long period of time. And this does have some effect on the team's dynamic. They actually dropped their last 2 games. Is it a big concern right now? Gotti says no. They just have to learn how to use the talent that they have right now. They were so used to either having Steph or KD. Now they lost Klay. So it's basically KD's show. So it's going to be a learning process for them.
It's not like they don't have, Draymond and, some other key players. I think they'll be fine.
Of course, absolutely. Also, there was a video that was put out today. It's actually a pretty disturbing video, but an MLB prospect assaulting his girlfriend at a ballpark. I'm not going to get too much into details, but, this just goes to show, like, hey, sometimes it's probably better not to ask people about whether or not they're homosexual and stuff during combines, but that's besides the point.
Wow.
And my last final thought, it's actually a very, very sad thought, and I apologize for ending the show on a down note, but theoretical physicist Professor Stephen Hawking passed away earlier today, at the age of 76. Not just a pioneer and a great mind on a scientific perspective, but being able to overcome his disabilities. And, one of his quotes is, if you have a disability or if there's something holding you down, utilize what you can do instead of what you can't do. But, great person, great mind, funny, being able to make jokes about himself, about his situation, and to just put smiles on people's faces. Definitely a huge inspiration in the scientific community, and all day today people just been talking about how great of a person he is. Fun fact, he was actually born on the day of Galileo's death, and he died today, which is also Einstein's birthday.
Mm.
And today's Pi Day as well, too. So,
The irony of that.
You just got learned, ladies and gentlemen. But we are at Endgame, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's track is from Cunning Linguistics, from their album A Piece of Strange, titled Brain Cell. We hope you enjoyed the track. Always make sure that you give some love to the artist. Look at their pages. We put all the links out there in the YouTube, as well as all the other different places that we're going to post the podcast at. Give them some love. Also give love to Group Dog, who's been dominating our intro track for as long as we can remember. We're reaching towards episode 100, and we're trying to see if we can do something really, really special. Maybe we could do another live video of us for 101. But we'll see. We have to talk with Scott and see if he has it in the budget for us to meet up and make that happen. But thank you very much for joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. Be sure to hit that like button on YouTube, hit subscribe, hit follow if you're on Twitch. Follow us on Twitter at DebateAmongstFra. You can follow myself, Ken86, the Doc TL Double. Follow our Facebook page, follow our Instagrams, and everywhere else that we're at as well too. I am the Professor John Gotti.
And this is Dr. Wednesday Night himself.
And we hope you have a great night. Same podcast time. Same podcast. Wait, I have something new to say. Goodbye and good night. Bang!
Taste the ocean.